Welcome back to another Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. Should we see what's going on a lovely island of Fawnhollow today? So yesterday I started talking about Security Breach, which has been newest Five Nights at Freddy's installment in the game, and yada yada yada. You can go back and watch it if you want to. And by talking about it, I'm more like talking overarching high concepts, I suppose, about the entire thing. I've now caught up on exactly what's going on, not an entire game, but with so far what Michael has uploaded of his own Let's Play of Security Breach. One interestingly strange game, I suppose, which is going on. In some ways, I'm kind of glad I decided not to actually play that for an actual Let's Play game, because I do not think it would be a particularly good fit. But anyway, hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhollow, it's 4:50 PM on Wednesday, December 22nd, 2021. CJ's visiting. But we'll give him a fish statue and then go about our usual business as always. Yeah, it's a very interesting game. It's got a very interesting sort of like set design around it and an environment. But the characters are, you know, more fleshed out than I suppose in previous games. Not supposedly, for sure. But you know, that's not exactly the hardest comparison in the world comparing to previous games. But I read a lot of like what people's the community's feedback is, I suppose, on that sort of thing. There's not actually much general community feedback, so it very much is this very sort of insular game, where secular game, I suppose, where only really the people in the fandom are very much the ones playing it, which I suppose is to somewhat be expected. But you know, it turns out reception not amazing on it. It's and apparently, strangely enough, its biggest downfall is apparently its lack of lore or much of a story in the first place, or its story's not very good or something, which is a strange one to behold, seeing as that seems to be like one of the biggest draws, I suppose, for the series in the first place, is its sort of like overarching lore and continuous like unveilings of secrets and stories, etc, etc, etc. And its gameplay is fine, if at most very confusing and bewildering and easy to get lost in at times. But I will say, just from what I look, the environment looks pretty cool, actually, you know, like genuinely pretty nice. I'm not going to say it's got like breathtaking graphics or anything, but like, you know, it doesn't feel particularly empty. I mean, it feels empty in the sense that it's a giant like sort of like amusement park pizzeria combination entertainment centre with no one in it. So of course it's going to feel kind of empty in that sense, but the environments are kind of cool, and character designs are kind of cool, but yeah, that's all I'm really going to say about that. I'm not really here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's because I don't really know what I'm talking about. So yeah, what I've been up to today, I've been doing Baba's U art, thumbnail art. I'm not sold on it right now because, you know, Baba's U's got a very simplistic art style, and you know, I've drawn some things like trying to stick to the simplistic style. I don't think it's worked. I'll be perfectly honest, compared to a lot of things, because Baba's U obviously has a much more simplistic art style, even more simple than Later Alligator, which has a very simple art style, and I honestly don't think it's I've done a very good job at it thus far. So I'm gonna have to revisit it, not revisit the entire thing, but like I don't know, because I tried to do a sort of like lineless thing, but the problem is Baba's U has actually no shading in it. So to copy that art style means I would have to put no shading in, which I've done. But then, you know, of course, since there's very few colours, Baba's U is quite a simplistic thing, but I've drawn a much more like complicated, I suppose, thumbnail art, has resulted in it me having to put some line arts in to try and differentiate things. It doesn't look great, I think, like this. I think it's a very weird sort of mix going on. So I don't know. I may just sort of scrap this direction I'm going in and just do it with the regular old line art, because I'm not particularly fond of it looking like this. But it could be worse, certainly. I'll give you that much. And you know, I've kind of got like half a line in anyway, so it's not really much big deal to add some more in. I don't know if I actually had shading. I think at this point, this is one of the ones where I had to be like, sorry, Baba's U, I can't match your art style in this case, because it just doesn't fit. I would have to simplify D to an incredible amount to get it to fit properly, which I'm not done and not going to do. And I have just noticed a mistake in my drawing, which doesn't really make much sense, but that's right. I'm going to continue on with that after I finished recording today's episode of Animal Crossing. And I don't know if I'm going to do a Happy in Paradise in advance today, and maybe I'll do one tomorrow. But yeah, I don't know what else happened. Solo Leveling, which is a Korean manhwa, aka like a Korean comic, I suppose, has recently finished. with what I understand to be the final chapter being released, it's interesting, you know, because Solo Leveling was a manhwa recommended by a friend, Ali, and it's very much his sort of thing, you know, sort of like the shonen-esque. Well, I guess it wouldn't be shonen because that would be for anime and mangas, but that sort of a genre, you know, you might have Hero Academias, your Attack on Titans, your One Punch Mans, I guess. I'm trying to think of what else would fit, but which is not really, when I started reading, it was certainly not really up my alley. I didn't think I wasn't like it's sort of like it's not particularly something I'm interested in, like battle shows or whatever. Obviously my tune has changed, I suppose, since then, and perhaps part of it is due to the fact I was reading Solo Leveling. I was like, you know, I wasn't really getting into it, but then, you know, at some point I started getting into it, and I suppose it was more like a change of perspective, I suppose, of what I was consuming, because, you know, I tend to like much more deeper characters, much more characters, and like overarching story, plot, and emotional like turmoil and that sort of thing. Not necessarily drama per se, but, you know, tense moments, etc, 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 etc. So I tend to like things. I also tend to like slice of life things, much more low key things, and, you know, shonen mangas and animes, any shonen media properties, I suppose, in itself, didn't really have that sort of appeal to me. So when I first read Solo Leveling, you know, on his recommendation, I started reading it. And I was like, I don't know, I'm not like super feeling it. I think it's kind of cool in like in a conceptual way, but I wasn't really sure if I was getting right into it, so, you know, I stopped reading it for a bit. But when I got back into reading it, you know, and been like, yeah, give it a second shot, and I actually kind of liked it, you know, for a while. It has a strange ending and final arc, I would say. I'm not going to spoil it for you in case you're interested in watching it yourself. Which would I recommend? Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely give it a sort of shot. I think it's pretty cool, and I certainly think its earlier to mid sort of like arcs feel the best for me, or at least I liked most. Probably quite a recurring theme, and I'm not sure if I can see many media properties which very, very long ones where the final arcs tend to be the best, but, you know, that's just more probably speaking to the media I consume rather than necessarily the efficacy of the talent of the writers, etc, etc. Because I mean, I say this, but the only one I had in mind was Beastars, to be honest. But Beastars have like a really nice start. Ooh, cool dear. You got a minute? I've got something for you. Think of it as my way of saying thanks. A pro coffee grinder. Ah, thanks, Brewster. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you for giving us coffee each and every day. Yeah, but I was just like thinking of Beastars, whatever, the manga, not the anime. Necessarily, I haven't actually watched the anime, so I can't really comment. But the manga has like a fantastic, like, first like set of arcs, and the second arc was alright, and then like the final arcs or whatever, it's kind of strange and not really my cup of tea, and I felt like it was a little bit all over the place compared to the sort of like slice of life school days style Beastars had going on. Like Beastars, I thought, what's her name, Paru Itagaki, something like that, is really good at sort of like establishing like a world and characters and their interactions, and creating an interesting sort of dynamic with that in that sort of setting. But then, I don't know, perhaps it got more shonen-esque, but not in a way that I particularly appreciated. But I don't know, maybe reading back on it now, I'd be like, that's not what I meant to do. Maybe reading back on it now, I'd be like, oh, you know, that my tune has changed towards it. But I somehow doubt that to a certain degree. But yeah, obviously now, days are much more open to like shonen-esque things, you know, all thanks to, I suppose, Solo Leveling really was at the start the catalyst. I was going to say My Hero Academia, but that's not really the case. I don't even know why I started watching My Hero Academia, or like, I think I just watched some clips of it, and I was just like, oh, you know, I'm interested about like this ensemble cast of characters. Seemed intriguing to me, at the very least. Oh, we need to catch more snowflakes, don't we? Because didn't we have like a very low stock of them or something? I feel like we did. I'm not sure if I just made it up or not. It's going to be quite difficult to catch some of them. So I started watching it, and yeah, I don't know. At some point I started just like enjoying it, I suppose. Like the same way that people enjoy action movies, I suppose. It's just like a sort of spectacle to watch them at sort of certain degree. Like I feel like that's something that people say a lot about action movies, so it's just like a switch your brain off, just enjoy it type of dealio. which never quite appealed to me, but certainly now I understand the appeal of it. Certainly now I can engage with it, and you know, if anything, it's not a bad thing. It can only be a good thing to be able to have a broader variety, I suppose, of media that you both appreciate and can consume, I suppose, in the first place. So yeah, so solo leveling is concluded. Kind of, maybe, I don't know, but people who have read the light novel, okay, the book, are saying that there could be epilogues, tackling side stories and that sort of thing, and this is the end. It was alright, you know. It's another sort of thing where I think what I find most in shonen genre especially is I tend to like the concepts that they came up with, you know, like My Hero Academia, very simple concept of like superpowers and superheroes and that sort of thing was extremely common. Of course, it would make sense for that to be like a school for like people with very strong powers to like become stronger and hone their talents. And of course, there would be like villains, quote, but they're not the way I think My Hero Academia does it quite well. Is that the villains tend to be much more not sympathizable, but more like you understand where they're coming from, but you still understand them as villains. They tend to be people who tend to be like outcasted by society, but then in certain degrees, or like rejected in some way, or like bad situations happen which cause them to be rejected, when if they were just in a different environment they could have got like the help they needed or been embraced in that sort of regard, and you can certainly understand why they turn to villains and then villainy instead. I suppose that's sort of like, it has an interesting concept, higher concept in the first place, so like having a whole schooling system, I suppose, in place for My Hero Academia, etc., and all that sort of thing. But then also it was interesting when how they tackle much more typical tropes, I suppose, because that's the thing with shonen animes and like shonen stories, I suppose, is perhaps a better way to put it, is they do tend to appeal a lot to tropes, you know. But I suppose it's not really a bad thing in a certain degree, you know. It's enjoyable to watch, you know, like the hero like seemingly pushed to the absolute limit and being like there's nothing more they can do, finding that like sort of like last burst of energy or whatever to finally pull through, or you know, the just not Deus Ex Machinima or whatever necessarily, but like they recollect and put together the puzzle pieces in their mind, remember their old like mentors, words or something, and then finally like push through all the strength to save the day, you know. As much as I go on about how much I like sad stories and that sort of thing, it's sometimes it's just fun to watch like the hero actually prevail in the end and not have such not be left watching finish watching something with just like a sense of like dread and doom and despair, I suppose. Sometimes it's nice to feel happy emotions when watching stories instead of sad ones. What on earth is this? I'm not sure what's going on, but I got some Discord messages. It's not really concerning me, but I'm just gonna ignore it. To be perfectly honest, yeah. So certainly let's not sell my ladder, especially since it's like the one I've been using for ages now. Yeah, well, we did that one already. We're just selling everything that we don't need, and we'll have to hop over to Harv's Island. But yeah, no, if anything, I suppose it's getting me to try more other things. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I'll watch Attack on Titan at some point. I did watch the first episode of Attack on Titan at some point, but I never like it. It's not like it didn't grip me necessarily, but like, how to put it? I didn't quite have the drive, I suppose, to continue watching to finish the rest of it. I thought it was good, but then I was just like, but I don't think it's for me. Oh, I forgot to buy flowers. That's the whole reason I walked in the first place. So do that, but you know, maybe my tunes change. You know, I watched a few episodes of what's it called, ReZero, Fate ReZero. I wait, hold on. I always get ReZero confused with Fate Stay Night for some reason, like which way round it is. I believe it's ReZero. One of Subaru and his ability to reset from death or whatever it's called. Sorry if that spoilers you, but that's like spoiled in the first episode. So I guess that's a shonen anime. I'm not really sure, but you know, I enjoyed it, and I haven't actually watched any more of it, so maybe I didn't enjoy it as much as I said it would. I said I did, but I thought it was entertaining at the very least. You know, you got to be, for me personally, you got to be in a certain mood, I suppose, to enjoy that sort of thing. No, that sounds very snobby. I don't mean like, ooh, you got to be in a certain mood to enjoy such pedestrian humour and entertainment. No. I mean like, my specific taste, like I tend to seek out things with a lot more like emotional stakes and tensions and character arcs and development, I suppose, with a strong focus on personality and I suppose an overarching lore in my way, rather than necessarily like flashy moments necessarily of it. I don't know if ReZero necessarily has as many flashy well, it definitely has its moments, I'll be honest, but there is an emphasis, I suppose, on characters as well, but I suppose in growth and change. But I don't know, maybe it's not really a show in that way. Maybe this is the point where I start watching, you know, like Haikyuu, One Piece, is that a show? I don't really know. You know, target demographics be damned anyway. Like, you know, watch what you want to watch, I suppose. Perhaps it's better to sort of just call it like battle shows in a certain degree. I wonder how much of it is fueled by the fact that not my lack of desire for competition, but like my lack of interest in competition, I suppose, in the first place. that tends to be essential themes when it comes to certain aspects of those shows where I'm just like, yeah, you know, I don't really care about watching them in the first place. I don't know if that's necessarily true, because like there was an interesting video by I can't remember who made it, but it's called like a non-battle manga, which talked about how should I put it, series which follow sort of like battle animes and mangas, sort of beats and tensions and combats, quote quote, but not through like direct physical combat. And one that they talked about was Kaguya-sama Love is War, which is an anime or manga, or maybe it was even like novel at some point. I'm not really well versed, forgive me, I've only seen the first season and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But was it Super Bunny Hop? It might have been Super Bunny Hop. I'm not too familiar with Super Bunny Hop, so apologies. It was just like a random recommended video which I decided to peruse. Red, why stop? Red, you only stock like 4 different paintings at one time. It's always the guy with a pearl earring. It's always the blue guy with like the fringes. I can't remember his name. Mona Lisa, to be fair, is not as common, but still. Yeah, what I was gonna say. Yeah, we talked about Kaguya-sama, which is as I described it, as a non-battle manga, which basically rather than being a physical battle, it's a battle of like mind games of trying to get. Well, basically, the premise follows Kaguya and what's his name? Hold on. Shinomiya, I think. Hold on. That doesn't sound right. That sounds like his surname, not his actual name. Kaguya. Wikipedia. Kaguya-sama Love is War. What is his name? Miyuki. That's it. Shirogane. Oh, Shinomiya is Kaguya's surname. Whoops. Like with friendship will improve. Cool. No, it's a sort of thing where it follows Kaguya and Miyuki, and they've both fallen in love with each other, but because they're too proud to admit that they love each other, they want to try and get the other person to confess their feelings first. So every single interaction, not every single interactions, but a lot of their interactions tend to be the sort of mind games of opportunities of being like, can I get the other person to confess their love for me without me having to confess my love for them, etc, etc. Of course, something like that's a very silly premise in the first place, but because it goes through so many like levels and mind games and things built upon things, it ends up being very entertaining. Like the one he talks about in the video is about the umbrella, because like in Japan, a boy and a girl, and an umbrella is like a symbol of love or something. That's why they got like that love heart umbrella graffiti, which is meant to be like basically the equivalent of people like carving hearts and putting their initials in the West. And everyone knows that. So, and it's raining, but so they both see it as an opportunity to try and get the other to offer them an umbrella, which would be in their way sort of like a declaration of love in a very sort of like roundabout, over the top way, which is kind of a point, I suppose. Yeah, and they just do like a load of mind games, like the fact you know, Miyuki's like, oh, you know, how could you forget having an umbrella? Kaguya, you're like, because she comes from a really rich family, surely they wouldn't let you go without an umbrella. But you know, because he's got no substantial evidence to back it up, he has to back down or whatever. Then some sort of mind games where Kaguya like noticed that Miyuki didn't ride a bike to school today, and he does that when it's raining because he must have checked a weather forecast or something, blah blah blah, and like she like accidentally deduces that Miyuki actually does have an umbrella in his bag, whatever. It's so comedic and over the top, and you know, I think that's probably maybe like that B-star, no, hold on, solo leveling, B-stars, no, solo leveling, Kaguya, and B-stars, I suppose, in battle order. Maybe not in battle order, I'm not exactly sure. Sort of made me appreciate the shonen genre a lot more, and perhaps that led to me actually watching My Hero Academia and being excited, I suppose, for season 5, I think. Was it season 6? I can't remember which one is upcoming, I forget. Whichever's coming out. And being able to appreciate and consume more media, I suppose, in that regard. You know? I suppose that's unsurprising. That's kind of like how things generally sort of go. If you want to get, oh, hold on. What's our fishing aim? Squid. Okay, let's fish in the ocean then. I mean, I suppose unsurprisingly, a way to ease someone into a genre is to sort of give them things which are like adjacent to the genre, which perhaps appeals more to their own sensibilities. But it had made me want to watch more of a like non-battle manga, that sort of thing. Because I think he talked about Alice in Borderlands or something in that video, which is a thing I read a little bit about now because I found it interesting. I'm not actually sure if I'd actually read a manga or anime, but perhaps at some point I will. And then you'll see a lovely little Animal Crossing episode with that as a title as I talk about it. You would have thought I'd talk about solo leveling in this one, but I don't really have much to say about solo leveling, to be perfectly honest. It's just sort of like it was an entertaining read. Its ending is a bit strange, you know, and I don't think it was like the smoothest ending or landing, but it was still an entertaining enough read that I enjoyed having read it. And it's an interesting concept, I suppose. I suppose part of me always does like the sort of isekai-esque genres where people just get like superpowers, and especially ones that you can train up. I do like high fantasy in that sort of sense, the ones that you see in like an MMORPGs, etc, etc, etc. You know, you always wonder like, oh, what powers would I be born with? How would I deal with them? What sort of like profession would I become in that universe? I don't know. If anything, though, the thing that's always a little bit sobering, I suppose, when you think about that sort of thing, is like, if magic powers are real, it probably, you know, you wouldn't be thinking of it as that cool if you existed with them. I mean, for all intents and purposes, and you know, science is the closest thing we have to magic, and it's not like I'm going out there just like doing science at every single opportunity, but like, if I was dropped into a world and magic was a thing, you know, I'd be studying magic at every single opportunity. But, you know, it would just be another thing that exists in that world, you know? It's, the magic is lost when it's something you're used to. Perhaps a bit unsurprisingly. But yeah, I don't know, what else is popular shown in series? Like, Naruto, I guess? I've seen like one episode of Naruto. I've no drive nor intention to watch anymore, if I'm perfectly honest. If you like it, you like it. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate on it or anything. Just not really my cup of tea. It turns out I'm perfectly fine with shonen as a genre, but I need specific ones. It's to be very character driven and focused. The dynamics and relationships along that sort of lines, I suppose. So I wonder perhaps if My Hero Academia is more the exception rather than the rule, which I'd imagine it would be. Yeah, again, I don't even watch TV shows or stuff all that often, so perhaps it's a little bit early for me to be commenting about these sort of things as if it's an actual sort of like revelation I've had. Phoebe, of course, thinking she is probably the one who wants to move. We are going to ignore her and see if we can force Tank to move. Apparently there's like no fish which exist in my ocean right now, which is a bit of a shame. You know? I'm not sure. Because, oh yeah, you know, that was what I was saying before, you know, screw whatever, like, target age, you know, I understand what target demographics are, of course, don't get me wrong, but it's like, it feels almost strange to got, like, such a wide genre, just all shonen stuff, because shonen, it just means it's targeted at young, like, teenage and young adult boys, right? That's a sort of target age demographic, but a lot of, you know, it's a rather wide sort of net you're casting, or that sort of thing. And it doesn't necessarily tell me that much about the media, I suppose, in the first place. Or that perhaps that's because I'm not well versed enough in the first place. I feel like all the conclusions I draw from it tend to be rather tropey rather than stuff of much substantial value, I suppose, of that actually sort of like illuminate what the thing will be about, you know? It'd be a lot better if things were categorized like, oh, this is a very plot-driven, lore-heavy media property. It was like, oh, this one really has good characterizations and like relationships and dynamics like that. Oh, this one has really nice like exploration of like political issues surrounding modern day and etc etc. Or like this one raises interesting philosophical questions. But I feel like people don't really talk about media properties in that sort of way. I know genre is quite a logical way, I suppose, to divvy up these sort of things. Wow, we have a lot of new recipes which we apparently never looked at. It's nice sort of like a easy way to like categorize things. But surprising how like unilluminating it can be at sometimes as well, you know. And I suppose it's certainly in the sort of age where a lot of mixed genres tend to mix and muddle, you know. People are moving past like stereotypical tropes, etc. that you might find. Because they're trying to experiment, they're trying to do things that are not so conventional, or what is expected of them in a media property. And thus genres become a lot less well defined, I suppose, and some media properties get more defined by their subversion of a genre rather than the actual genre they are. Again, I'm not really much of an entertainment critic, so perhaps it's not really my place to speak on this behalf. So, you know, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Just sort of like, that's what I think about, you know. Often say, like, I like horror, but, you know, that's not necessarily true. I don't really care for, like, slasher horrors. I care for, like, tense, thrilling horrors, which, like, fill you with suspense at every single moment. I don't really care for comedy in horror, necessarily. But that, you know, even that in itself is not necessarily true, because I really enjoy Parasite, which has a lot of comedic elements, but its comedic elements are sort of mixed together with high tensions, high stakes, etc, etc. That sort of thing is just like at that point, you know, that Parasite might not even be a horror, it could be a thriller. Perhaps that's more accurate, but it's like, oh, but what sort of thrillers do I like necessarily? I don't know. I suppose what I'm saying is categorization is quite difficult, and a lot of times can even be rather unilluminating in a lot of cases. Which is, you know, I'm not sure if I'd say it's annoying or sad, it's just like, if only it could be something else. If only it could be easier, if only there's a more surefire way, but again, you know, sort of just like, categories are meant to be like broad, overarching groups. You're meant to use categories and subcategories and subsubcategories, I suppose, to refine the information in the first place, and by not doing that, I suppose you're kind of defeating the point of the overarching groups and categories in the first place. Which, you know, I don't really think there is, like, a solution. Nor should there necessarily be a solution. I don't even think there's a problem, I suppose is perhaps a better way to put it. It's just like, it's a weird situation, you know? It makes it difficult, because when people are just like, oh, what sort of like movies do you like? What sort of TV shows do you like watching? The only things I can really say is like, I like things with characterization and character relationships, I suppose. Dynamics like that in between them. It's like, okay, well, that's a bit of a broadcast. You say, I like animation, I guess. Like, do you like every animation? No, not really. And, I mean, I guess I could say I like good animation, but it's like, what constitutes as a good animation? I don't know. Obviously, this is very much a non-issue, you know. I don't actually think about this very often, and I don't, you know, think we should like reformat the entire system. If someone like came up to me and was like, oh, I like animation, you know, this is, if I was curious about what sort of animations in particular, like I'd be like, oh, do you like, you know, like animation for Asia, or do you like, you know, much more like smaller like French cartoons or that sort of thing? Perhaps I'd talk about Disney-esque style of things, you know, or I'd just be like, oh, cool, and then like it doesn't really matter, I suppose, at the end. It's just an interesting thing to think about, I suppose. Categorization, quite difficult. I'm not really sure what I'm going to call this episode. To be honest, I guess I'll call it Shonen? Nah, not really, I don't know. Categorization. Genre categorization, perhaps something like that. But anyway, we're going to round off this episode here, so if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares are greatly appreciated. Join me, Dear Darling, Discord, follow me on Twitter down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye for now.